Hello everyone, welcome back to this CSS part of our coding course. Now we've reached the end of the CSS section and we'll be having our project video now. Now in this video we'll be building a basic CSS website, or rather a web page, because this is a single page website, so all information is on the same page. So the home keeps us in the home section. As you can see, we have a background image here with some text and some styled buttons. Then when you click about us, we scroll down to the about us section. We have an image here with the information on the right. So this is done using a flex box, and we also have a border around this image. Then we have the what we do section, same as this but inverted. Then click on services, takes you to the services section. So we have some cards here with images and a box shadows around them with a border radius. In the contact us section, we have a simple CSS form with basic styling and a button, and we have our footer with a contact us section with details, so a phone link and an email link. And we have quick links here which also link back to our page sections. So about us takes us to the about us section, services takes us to services, and contact us. Then we have a now for services, so if you have anything that you do that you want to list here or add other pages. Then we have our social links here. So this is a basic example of a CSS website and what you can create using CSS. And not to forget, this website is also fully responsive. So if I inspect this page now and put it in tablet view, so this tablet view, you can see at a laptop view we have our links listed out. Then in tablet view and below we have a menu bar, and all the flex box now has become, all the content have now taken up 100% of the width, same as the cards, contact us form. Then our footer sections were divided into 4 columns, but now 2. And as the screen becomes smaller, it gets to 1 column per section, just like this. And we can also open up our menu bar by clicking this. So this effect is done using pure CSS, no JavaScript required. So we'll be building something like this. We're building a clone of this in this video, and once you've been able to do this, you should have no problem building professional looking websites in your coding career. So let's get into this video. So now I've created a new folder with assets, images, and I've created 2 files, index.html file and our CSS file. So this images folder will be made available in the description or pinned comments in the video. So first of all, as always, we create this HTML template, and we can change this title, so CSS web page. So now the next one we're going to do is to be linking our CSS file. So we use a link tag, and just like this we have our style.css file, which is this. So let's check our results. So now our title now has been changed successfully. So now the first thing that I want to do is to get our assets. So we'll be using a custom font. So go to Google Fonts, and just like the previous video, we'll be using the Open Sans font. So I click on get font. then get embed code and just copy this. So let's go back to our code editor and paste this in. So just indent this. And the next thing I'm also going to do is to get our font awesome CDN so we can have access to icons. So we can just do font awesome CDN. So I don't know if I've mentioned this, the full meaning of a CDN is a content delivery network. So let's just paste this, can find out more about that on the internet. So now we are ready with our page. All the assets we'll be needing have been loaded in correctly. Now let's start with the first section, which is our nav bar. So now to create a nav bar, we start off with the nav tag and we add the nav bar class to it. So we can start this later on. Then the first we're going to add, the first section in the nav bar will be the brand logo. Just give it a class of brand logo. We can just have a simple link here with a hash for going back up to the page. So, and if we leave this open, anytime we click on this link, the page will be refreshed. So let's go back into Chrome and see that effect. So if anytime I click this, the page gets refreshed. But setting to hash just adds that hash to the URL, and that also helps if you click this and you are somewhere else in the page, you get redirected back to the top. So let's change this CSS web page to the text brand logo. So the next one I'm going to do is add our nav links or our menu. So let's give this a class of menu, and now can start with our list items and give them class names of menu item. Then with links, so this is home. Copy this 3 more times. About us, services, and contact us. So now let's see the results. And there you go. So let's add the links to different sections. Now the way this works right here, anytime that we click the link, so you can see we get the link we added is hash about us. So what that just basically does is you set the link of whichever link to the ID of whichever section you have. So if you, this section has the ID of about us, which is why when we click this, which links to about us, it gets redirected back to this section. Same as services and contact us, and home just has hash, which just takes us back to the top of the page. So let's add those link into those sections. So for here, set about us, so those sections we created later. Here we have services, and here we have contact us. So now the next one I'm going to do is to add a menu, a hamburger menu for responsive CSS. So when the web page size gets to the size of a tablet or phone, we want to see a menu bar icon instead of this menu list. So now for this, we'll be doing something different than what we did in the previous video where we created an navbar. So for this, we'll be using a label. I'll be understanding this later on in this video, but for now, we'll use a label and add a class name of menu toggle. And now we add the icon of a menu bar to this page. So the code for it is you can use an I tag with a class name of fa solid to font awesome solid, a space for font awesome bars. I just refresh, and if you want to understand this more, you can just go over to the font awesome website and can search for icons. You can just do bars, and this is it right here. So for other kind of icons, they have different CSS, they have different HTML codes for that. So now we're going to link this label to a checkbox, and now take note of where this checkbox comes in. Create a checkbox and add a let's leave the styling for now. Now we'll link this label to this checkbox by the ID of menu toggle. So anytime we click this label, this menu bar, it checks or unchecks this checkbox. Now what this basically helps us do in CSS is we can select this checkbox using a pseudo class of checked. So we can check whether this checkbox is checked or not, and then if it's checked, we can now select the next element, which is this menu list, and decide to either show it or not. So we'll look at that functionality later on when we get to CSS styling. So for now, we're done with the HTML structure of the navigation bar. Now let's get to styling this. So now open up your CSS file if you haven't created one, create it. So now we are going to be doing a little setup here. We are going to be adding our colors. So you don't have to follow this, you can put any custom color you want, but for me these are the colors I'll be using, so you can copy this if you want. So I have primary color, secondary color, primary color hover, secondary color hover, an accent color, navbar color, text color, and text muted color. So the next thing we're going to do is select all elements and add a box sizing of border box, so that both padding and margin will all be contained in the width of our elements. Then we'll add a padding of 0 and margin of 0, so that all elements have the same padding and margin by default. The next thing we're going to do is style our body. So now our body has a default color of white, but now we're going to change it to our accent color, just like that. And we add our font family. So the font we got from Google, Open Sans, and we add the sans serif. So remember to add a comma here. And let's go and check. So our font should be applied now. Okay, so now our background color now has also been changed. Now before we move on, let's also add this. So HTML, so I'm selecting the HTML tag itself. So HTML, we add a scroll behavior of smooth. So basically what this enables us to do is to have this smooth animation of when we scroll to different sections. So now we've got our styling set up basically, but we have to also add some styling for other elements. such as the anchor tag, so I don't want any text decoration on it, so no underline for our links. And I also want our images to be responsive, so I'll give all images a max width of 100%, which means they take up a maximum width of 100% of their parent element. So now we're done with the setup. We can move over to styling and navigation bar. So now when writing CSS code, it's always good to add comments when you're entering a new section of styling. So add a comment by just clicking Ctrl// so navbar. So this indicates that this is where the navbar styling begins. So I'm going to select the navigation bar class, which is the navbar which we added here. And now first of all, we're going to add a position of sticky. So if you look at this, our navigation bar remains at the top when we scroll. So to achieve that, we use a position of sticky. So position sticky, and to ensure it remains at the top, we add a threshold at the top of 0. Then now we want our elements to be aligned horizontally, so for that we add a display of flex. So display flex, then we'll add flex wrap. So if the width of the elements exceed the navigation bar width, we want the elements to wrap under each other. And we add a justify content to justify content space between, then align item center. So basically what this just does is our elements here get aligned with space. So we have our brand logo over here, then the menu bar over here, this checkbox over here, and the main menu list. Now we don't want our checkbox to actually be shown to our user, and for that we can just use some inline styling here on the input type of checkbox. So add a style of display none. So that's what we have now. So let's continue with the styling, and before we move on, we don't want our user to see this menu bar when the screen size is at that of a laptop or desktop, only when it switches the size of a tablet and lower. So we're going to select the menu toggle. So this is right here, class name of menu toggle. So select navbar and the child that has a class of menu toggle. So first of all, we want to style this a bit. Add a cursor of pointer. So what this just does is that when we hover over this element, our cursor gets changed to that of a pointer, just like for links. So add a cursor of pointer, and we want to increase the size of this a bit. So you can say 25 pixels. And now it's big enough. So for now we can just add a display of none. Okay, so now let's continue styling the main parts. So we want to have a background color, so we can just set this to navbar color, and for now this is white. So a good thing about using variables is that if you ever want to change anything, you can just come here directly and change it, and all the places where that variable is defined will be changed automatically. And we also want a fixed height. So I want a fixed height of 80 pixels, and the next one I'm going to do is add padding to this navigation bar. So add a padding of top and bottom 20 pixels, left and right 200 pixels, and now let's see the results. Okay, then I also want this navigation bar to have a box shadow. So give a box shadow, so the horizontal and vertical axis will have the sizings of 0, then a radius of 8 pixels, and I use the RGBA color method. So just give this 75, 75, 75, and then a visibility of 0.1. so this just determines how transparent it is. So the more you take it up, the less transparent. So just use 0.1 here. Now if you want to actually change this box shadow color, you can just increase it to whatever, and if you keep it red. But that's not actually what we're going for. We just want a simple dark box shadow. So this is okay. Let's see the results. And yes, so that's just basically what we're going for. So before I move on, I also want to add a bit of some other things. Since this navigation bar is sticky, I want it to always be on top of everything on this page, so I'll give it a Z index of 1000, and that'll be it for now. So now the next thing we're going to start styling would be our brand logo right here. So select navbar again, and the class name of brand logo, and we want to style the anchor tag itself. So start by increasing the font size. I'll put 28 pixels, and then font weight, I want the font weight to be bold, and a color of text color, so the color will define right here. So let's see our results. Okay, so this is okay. Then the next thing I want is to style the nav menu. So now I want the elements to be aligned end to end and not vertically. So I'll select the menu and give it a display of flex, then align items center. So basically the items get aligned vertically centered, then a gap between each of them of 40 pixels. Now let's see the results. So that's what I was going for. And the next thing I'm going to do is to style the individual menu items. And first of all, we also want to get rid of these bullet points. So the next thing I'm going to do, select this, then the menu item itself. So if we're going to add a position of relative, so this will enable us to be able to add this hover effect right here of this blue line. So give it a position of relative, then we'll give it a display of inline block. So it should already take up the block level element should only be the width of the element itself. Then to remove the bullet point, add a list style of none. So we should have our desired result now. Exactly. So now let's style the anchor tag itself. Select this and the anchor tag. So want the font size of 16 pixels, the font weight, so want this to be a bit bold, so we'll just use 500 for medium. Then color of text color, and also add a transition of 0.5 seconds, because we'll be doing some transitioning when the user hovers over the item. So for now, just add a basic hover effect of changing the color, and that will be changing the color to, so I can also come and define one more color here, so that can be text hover color, and that will be hash AD. So a subtle gray. You can come here and set this text hover color. So now hover over this, we get the subtle hover effect. So now we are getting close to the result we have here. Last thing to do for now is to add this after effect. So now for that, we use a pseudo element. So the pseudo element will be the after pseudo element. So we select this menu item once again and add that element after. So I can start styling. We want a content of just blank, then a height of 3 pixels for the line, then for now a width of 0% because by default we don't want to show the line, then a background color of primary color, so for that blue, then give the position of absolute, then left 0. We want it to be at the bottom, so bottom minus 10 pixels, then a transition of 0.5 seconds. So now let's select this again. So we want that when our user hovers on this menu item, we want the after elements to be shown. So we'll just add a hover pseudo class here before the pseudo element of after, and now can I set a width of 100%. So basically now we should have that effect. Now when we hover, we get that effect of that line. So now good, we've been able to do the navigation bar at the laptops and desktop view. Now next thing we should be looking at is when our user gets to a tablet view or a phone view. So now as you can see, at phone view it looks messed up, and same for tablet. So now this is where our media queries come in. So let's start off with that. Let's give this the first media breakpoint I want to have is at 1200 pixels. So let's start off with the styling. So before I move on, I actually want to have this hover effect on our menu item instead of the anchor tag. So now let's move over to those media queries. So now for writing media queries, we have a shorthand of just me at media, and then can now add your threshold. So our media max width of 1200 pixels. I want to reduce the padding that we have on our navigation bar. So we still retain the 20 pixels top and bottom, but now on the side to be reduced down to 80 pixels. So now you can see when higher than 1200, the padding at the size is 120, and when lower, the 80 pixels. So that'll be it for that media threshold. The next media threshold I'll be looking at is at 960. So at 960, I still want to reduce the padding a bit. So I can just copy this and change this up to 960 pixels. And I want to reduce the padding down to 60 pixels. So you can see the padding has been reduced. So anything higher than 60 pixels, higher than 960 will have the padding size of 80 pixels, and lower, and just like that. So now where we now actually get into the main styling will be at the media screen width of 860. So this is a good point to now display our menu, our hamburger menu. So now at media, the max width of 860 pixels. So if your if the links you had were a bit longer, you want to do this earlier than this, but I feel this is a good screen width to change over to another hamburger menu. So now for this, I want the nav bar to have a padding. We want to move the padding at the sides completely, so padding of 20 pixels and 0. So we'll have that. Then our brand logo, we want to add, to make up for the padding, we'll add a margin at the left. So margin left 24 pixels. And now same for the navbar menu toggle. So at this point we want the menu toggle to be visible, so we set it to display block, and for this we set a margin of right to the same 24 pixels. Now let's see the result. Okay, so now at this point we don't want this menu list to be shown. Now for that, we get to start styling the menu. Select navbar and menu. Now at this point we want the width to be 100% so that it doesn't fall in line with the brand logo and menu toggle. So at this point now it falls under. So now we want to set a height of auto, so this will help us when adding this slide out animation that we have here. So this animation, so set a height to auto. Then currently we want the max height to be 0, so we don't want this menu to be shown. Then a padding of 0, and now we don't want the elements to be shown side by side but rather vertically, so set a display of block. So let's see the result now. Then we add a overflow of hidden, and a transition. We have still the same 0.5 seconds, but now with ease in and out. So now it's no longer visible. Now the reason why the elements have not actually been stacked on top of each other is because we added the display of inline block to the links. So for now, let's remove the overflow hidden so we can see what we're actually doing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is start styling the menu items. So I'll select the menu item. Now we'll add a display of block, so it wants to be a block level element that fills up the entire width of the parent. So just like that, that's what we want to go for. And at this point we don't need this After Effects, so we can just get rid of it by adding a display of none to the after pseudo elements. And now let's just style the menu item, the anchor tag itself. So once change the padding, can put this 18 pixels and 24. Then we also want this to be a block level element to fill up its parent. So let's see our results. So yes, this is what we're going for. We no longer have that After Effect. So now let's add that. Let's start with the functionality of this checked of the checkbox. So now what we're going to do, we can now show this overflow hidden, and before that we also want to add a background color of navbar color, because we actually want the menu to be white and not just transparent. So now we're going to select our checkbox, our menu toggle to navbar hash. So remember, we give it an ID. So to select IDs we use hash. So in menu toggle, so now at this point we're going to add a pseudo class of checked. So we're checking whether this checkbox is checked, and in that case we now select the next element, which is our menu, and we'll want to add a border at the top of 1 pixel solid. So you can just encode this directly. Then we also want this to have a margin top of 20 pixels, and we can just add a max height of 1000 pixels. So our menu won't actually reach this height, but just so the menu can be visible, we'll just add this in pixels, because it won't work if you're using percentage values. So I'm gonna refresh this, we should get that animation, and just like that. So now we are done with the navbar. So at the different media sizes, at different screen widths, our navigation bar shows up correctly. Okay, so now the next section I'll be moving over to is this, the hero section. So let's first create the HTML structure. Now after our navbar, come here and we have section. So add the class name of hero. Then before we move on, we also want to have some classes. So the first class that I'll have is the container class. So this is just a predefined class name which will help us in this our web page. So you can copy the CSS code and add it to your project. So if you here, we also add our media queries of max at 1200 pixels. We add the max width, and at a min width of 1400 pixels and up, we add a max of 1320 pixels. So this will help us with consistency in each section of our page. So now we can move over to the hero section. So for this, you can just come and put in hero section. So now let's create the HTML structure. We're going to use that class name of container here. So give it class name of container, and also give it another class name of hero content. And we add our h1 with the text welcome to our website, then a paragraph tag, then with our lorem text. And I also want this to have this inline style of margin bottom 20 pixels. So let's see what we have right now. Okay, and now we also want a button group to give with the class name of button group. So this will house our learn more button and contact us button. So give this link, and this should link us to the about us section, just like this navigation bar link. So about us, and here now we create our button and the learn more, and our second button here will be contact us, and right there. So now our hero section is basically done, the structure for it is done. Now it's to start styling. So the first thing you notice here is that we have a background image here. So let's start off with that. So first of all, we want the height of this hero section to fill up the page starting from the navigation bar. So now, knowing that we added a fixed height to our menu, you can just come here and use the height property. Now we haven't looked at this, but in CSS we have a calculation function. So what it just basically does is that you can calculate different values. So I can calculate the value of 100 VH, which is the total width of the total height of the page, which is from top to bottom and not the actual height of the full web page. So I can calculate the difference between the full height of the page and 80 pixels, which is our menu bar's height. Then after that, we can that will give us the height needed for the hero section. The next one I'm going to do is to add our actual background image. Then, just like I said, this will be made available in the description below or pinned comment. So we get our image, which is the hero.jpg that we have right here. So we also want to have a background size of cover, so it takes up the full page, and we also don't want the image to repeat if it's not big enough. To add the background repeats, set to no repeats. So now I have our image. If you notice, there's a difference between this, and that's because for this we have a gradient in front of the image. So to add this gradient, we can just come over here before the URL, we'll add a comma and add linear gradient. So we'll just, to remember, we need 2 colors for a linear gradient, so we can just add the same thing, but for this I want the transparency to be 0.75. That should give us our desired gradient. Yes, that's perfect. So now we can start styling our text. So first of all, we want the hero content to be at the center, so we can select the hero class name and the hero content class name. So this styling applies to both. So we want it to be a flex box, so display of flex, then a flex direction of columns so they don't actually stack side by side, and we want our content to be at the center horizontally and vertically also at the center. Now that should give us the desired results. And now for our text, we want the text to be aligned at the center, so any overflowing text should come at the center right here. And for that, we select, just to make sure, we select both our h1 tag and our paragraph tag. So we can just add a text align of center, and we also want the color to be white so it doesn't conflict with the gradient that we have going on there. Okay, so now we're getting close to finishing up this section. Next thing I'm going to do is to add a max width at this hero content. because this text actually stretches on for too long, and that's not ideal, well, at least to me. So you can select the hero content section and add a max width of 800 pixels and just a little padding of 20 pixels. And that should give us the desired result. Okay, so now the next thing that I'll do is to start styling the H1 elements. So first of all, I want to increase the font size a bit, 48 pixels, and also add margin at the bottom to separate it from the paragraph tag. And okay, so now we're getting closer to this. So the result we're having is getting closer to what we have here. So the next thing now is the paragraph tag, and for that all I just need to do is to reduce the font size. So I reduce the font size to 15 pixels, and that should be that for the text. Okay, so another thing that I also want to do is to reduce the H1 elements. Now at different screen sizes, the H1 element should actually be reduced, because at a screen size of something like this looks just way too big. So you can just add one breakpoint. So at tablet views and below, so that's medium max width of 786 pixels, we want the H1 elements to have a font size of 38 pixels instead of 48. So for now that should look a lot better. Okay, so this text is a bit long, so let me just copy this and paste that into what we have. So that should be good. Get rid of this white space and let's see the results. Okay, so now the text is all done. The next one we want to move on to is our buttons. So first of all, let's close this sidebar so we get more working space. And now the first thing we want to style is our button group right here. Now we add a styling, select it first of all, so hero, then hero content, and then button group, set it to display of flex, and add a gap between the buttons of 15 pixels. So first of all, I actually want this styling to be above the individual stylings of the H1 and paragraph tags. Okay, so now that should do. Now that is it for the hero section. The next one I'm going to do is to start styling our button classes. Now the button classes down to be styling are custom buttons that I've created. So the class names that we'll be having right here will be of button, then button rounded. So we'll have different variants of our buttons, and button primary. Now, but for the contact us, I want it to be a button of secondary but with an outline. So that's just basically what we have right here. So this is our primary button, then a secondary button with an outline, and when you hover over it, it becomes a full secondary button. So now let's start with styling for that. So you can just create another section or just go to the top where we've predefined our elements. So where we override some styling. So after the anchor tag and image, let's start with our buttons. So you can just add a comment for buttons. So first of all, the button class, the btn class, is a general class for all buttons, so can override default HTML stylings. So first we want to have a padding of 12 pixels top and bottom, 30 pixels left and right. Then we want our text to always be at the center, a default border radius of 5 pixels, and our font weight should be bold, a background by default of transparent, then our color white, the cursor of pointer, then transition 0.5 seconds. We also want any overflow to be hidden. And also, just for good measure, give the position of relative. And that should be it for the default styling of the buttons. Let's see the results we have. So that's okay. Now let's start styling the button variant. The first thing we'll do is to style the class for button rounded. So any button that has the class name of button rounded, we want to give it a border radius of 25 pixels. So that should make it more rounded. So that's the desired result. Now let's start styling our button color variant. Now a button of primary should have a background color of primary, and we also want the border color, so we can have a border color of pixel solid, same primary color, and then same for secondary. So we can just change all this to secondary. Let's see the results. Okay, so now we're getting there. Next, I want to do is to animate this button a bit on hover. So all buttons when hovered on should increase their size to the scale of set to 1.05, and let's see, when we hover, our button gets increased. So now we also want to do different things on different button variants on hover, but before that, let's create the outline variants. So button primary of outline, we want to give it a border color of just 2 pixels, solid primary color, so no background color, and same for secondary. Let's see the results. So that should be on this now. Okay, so as you can see, we also get that hover effect. So now to achieve this background color which slides in, we want to add a span. So that span is what will give us that background color. So for that, we can just add the span to the button secondary outline. So now let's start styling this. We select that span, so for both the primary and secondary buttons. So give this a background color of primary, and same for the secondary buttons. Let's change all this to secondary. Then we want that when these buttons get hovered on, both primary and secondary, we want the width of the span tag to be increased to 100%. So let's see the results. So for now, we've not added any styling to that span, so let's style that span element. So now any span element inside that buttons will be taken for a button outline span. So the first thing we'll do is to add a height of 100%. Then by default we want the width to be 0%. Then a border radius of 5 pixels. We want the position to be absolute so the text doesn't interfere with it. Then both left 0 and bottom 0 to position it correctly. Then a z index of -1 so it doesn't cover our text. I'm going to add a transition of 0.5 seconds. Let's see our results. So now that's the desired result we're looking for, and we can also check how it looks for button primary outlines. So let's change this to secondary. And so yeah, that looks good. So now we are done with the hero section. Let's check our links are linked up correctly. So next thing we'll be moving over to is our about us section. So first things first, as always, we need to create the HTML structure for that. So now for this, I want to put the main tag so our browser knows that this is where the main content of the page starts. So I'll have a section and now give it an ID of about us, so that anytime the user clicks on any link that's linking to the about us, this is the section that will be scrolled to. So now we use that container class we created earlier. So we give it a class of container, and now we also want to have a div with a class of left, and a second div with a class of right. So now for this, we're going to have an image. Create a div with a class name of border image, and our image itself, so always remember to add an alt, so about us image, and the src to this is image/about us .jpg, and let's see what we have. Okay, so now let's move over to the right. Now before move over, let's add some styling. So after all this, we want to create another styling for sections. So just section, and now this will be just a general styling for all sections on our page. So first of all, I want to add a styling for every element that has the styling of section title, and basically for that I just wanted to have a font size of 36 pixels. Now for section subtitle, just section subtitle, let's leave a space in between this because we are not adding it to the section. We're not styling the section, any section with a class name section title, so that's why we remove that space. Then a margin bottom of 20 pixels for subtitles. font size 14 pixels, font weight of medium, and color text muted color. And now for border image, so all this will be located in different sections, so can also add this here. So any element with the class name of border image, so we'll make the flex box so we can center that image, justify content center, align item center, then the border with a thick border of 6 pixels, solid primary color, then a padding of 5 pixels. So now image should be shown correctly with the border image, just like that. Now let's start adding the HTML structure of the right. So for this, I'll have a h1 tag with a section title class name of text about us, then a subtitle with the class of section subtitle, then the text we're having is just some simple Lorem text, and then just add some content right here with paragraph tags with spacings of margin bottom 10 pixels. Okay, let's just get this, paste it, so you can just copy all this out. And now let's see the result that we're having. Okay, so now we can start off with our styling. Let's actually look. Okay, this is what we have here, and yes, so now let's start off our styling. So first things you'll notice is this is the flex box, so the both columns are aligned side by side, so that's what we'll start off with. Let's select the container class and we'll just put it about section, and since the about and what we do we share the same styling, so this will just be about / what we do section. So now select the about us ID and the container, same for what we do. So what we do. I'll just give it a display of flex and a gap of 25 pixels between the elements. Let's see our results. Okay, so now we want each element to take up 50% of the width. So for that, we start styling, select the left and the right. So now we do hash about us. So for this we can just actually do, just for simplicity, or just to make sure, since we'll be using the section tag for different places. So hash about us container, then left, or just simply select the section element itself. So section, then container left, and we also want to select section and container right. Now we just give this width of 50%. So now let's see the results. So now that just basically it. We have our results right here. Now let's also remember we also have to make it responsive. So at smaller screen widths, we don't want this to remain side by side. So at a width of, let's see, 960, so 960 should be a good threshold. At 960 we want the elements to be displayed stacked on top of each other. So at media, max width, to change this to 960, we want to select this and change it to display block, so it becomes a block level element. Then we select the left and right. We want it to have a width of 100% and margin bottom 20 pixels. Let's see the results. Okay, so now with this we should be done with both the about us and what we do section. So just a matter of copy and paste. So let's see right here. So now I can just copy and paste this. Let's come here. You can copy this section and come down here and paste it and give an ID of what we do. Copy this and put it here, then change this from left. This should be left and this should now be right. Then change the text to what we do, and our image also will be changed to what we do, the JPG. The same for the alt name. So now let's see that result. Okay, so now but we want this to give a visual difference between these two sections, so we can add a background of white, and for that we can just create a simple CSS class name of, let's say, BG white. So for this, just come here and after our container styling, can just create the BG white class name. So just give it background color #FFFF, and also want to create one more, so text muted. So I can just give it a color of text muted, so anytime we need this in our page, can just use this class name. So now we can add BG white to this, so class BG white for background color white. Now that's it for the about us and what we do section. The next section we're moving over to is the services section. So now let's create the services section. So now this shouldn't take us time since most of our styling has been created. So as always, create a section. So with an ID of services, and then add a container class. So just a div with container. Then we want to have a h1 tag with section, class name of section title, which we defined. So this will be services, and I also want to give it an inline style of margin bottom 20 pixels, so we have some spacing between our services list and our text title. So now next is services list. So then we also want to have div dot service container, so we can actually have 3 of this since we have 3 services cards. So now I can start creating them simultaneously. So first of all, create a div.service, which is the card itself, then service image, and add an image slash services slash service1, then service image 1, so the numbers will be changed later. Then h1 dot service title, you can just put service title, you can change the text to whatever you want. Then next is our p class, and with the class name we just created, text muted, we have the default Lorem text. And now that's it for the HTML structure for our service cards. That's the result. So now the thing we need to change is our images. We want each card to have different images and alt names, so service 2 and then service 3. Okay, so now let's get to styling. Let's now create a new section, so services section. So now we select our services list, so services list, and as always pick a flex box and give the gap of 20 pixels. Then we want to have service container, each with a width of 33% margin bottom, and now 33% is because we have 3 cards. So if you had something like 2 cards, you set the width to 50%, and something like 4 cards will be 25%, and so on. So now let's see the results. So now our cards are looking okay, but we need to also change some of this. First of all, let's change the text, the title, instead of the tile it's meant to be title, to service title. Now the next one I'm going to do is to start styling the service itself. So I'm going to do select dot service, to get the background color of white, padding 15 pixels, border radius 10, box shadow does this, and a transition of 0.5 seconds. Then in our user hovers, just to give visual effect, we want to transform this scale of 1.02. Then our images, service image, then the image tag itself should have a border radius of 10 pixels. Then the paragraph tag, give the margin top of 10 pixels to separate it from the title. Then the font width of 400, some normal. Then font size of 15 pixels. So let's see our results. Okay, so let's see what issue we have here. So let's check this, and the problem is here. So our service is meant to be service container, so just add that in, and our cards should now be fully complete. Okay, next it's to add responsiveness. So at phone and tablet sizes, the cards have become too small, so let's see the threshold we have here. So same for, let's see, so the same threshold that we have for our about us and what we do section. So let's just add that, and that should be very simple and quick. All you just need to do is come here and at media max width 960. You just need to do is change the service container. The width should become 100%, and the service list should now become a block level element. And that should be it for that. Let's now inspect this, and at 960, yeah, our cards now get shown stacked on top of each other. Okay, so now that's it for the services section. The next section we're moving over to is the contact us form, and for that, first of all, start with the HTML structure. So section, give it the ID of contact us, then with the class name of BG White, and now we add the container class, then give it a section title of contact us, and some styling of margin bottom 20 pixels. So let's create our form. Give the class name of contact form, then first of all we need a form row for the first two inputs. So form row, then each of our inputs will be in a form group. So div group in our label inputs, so label for name, and input type text, class name of form inputs, and just give it an ID of a name and ID of name, and we make this required. You can just copy this, paste, change this to email. So email, and also type email. Now that's it for the first two elements, for first two inputs. Now the next form group will be for our subjects, and for this we'll use the select drop down. So change this input to select with a class name of the same form input, then name subject, ID subject. We also want this to be required, and now we can create our options down here. So you can add as many options as you want. Then another form group for our text area for messages, so a label of message, then a text area of name and ID of message, and don't forget to add class of form input, and also make this required. So now we're done the contactors section, at least for the HTML structure. Now is to move on to styling this form. Okay, and before I forget, let's add our button to be able to actually submit the form. So down here we add a button of type submit, a class name of button primary, then can just do continue, and our button should be fully styled. So we have a fully styled button. Now is to style the form itself. So this is what we're going for. Let's start styling. Create a new section, contact us. Then the first styling we'll be doing is to select the contact us form, the contact form class name. So give a background color of accent color, a padding of 20 pixels, and a border radius of 10. That'll be all for that. Next one do is a contact form, then form row. So this is for those are two first elements. So give the display of flex and justify content space between, so they will be at opposite ends of each other, then a gap of 10 pixels between them. And the next thing is contact form group, and we just make that a block level element, margin bottom 10 pixels. Now let's style the labels. So contact form group label, give it a font size of 14 pixels and a color of text muted. Now in our form row, we want each of the inputs of the form groups to take up 50% of the width, so they actually stay side by side. So just add 50%, and so far let's check what we have. Change the dollar sign to 50%, and our result should look close to what we want. Okay, so now we need to start styling the form input class itself now. So first of all, let's see form group. Now the form input, so contact form inputs. Our form input will have a width of 100%. It should be a block level element, a padding of 8 pixels, font size of 14 pixels, a border 1 pixel solid, this color code, and a color, so the text color should be just a grayish, then a border radius of 5 pixels, an outline of none, so we don't want any outline when we click on it, and a transition of 0.5 seconds. So now it should start looking more like it. Okay, so now basically we have our form prepared, but now when we click on this, we want to have that border around it. So for that, all you just need to do is to use the pseudo element of focused. So focus, we just set the border color to primary, then let's see results. So let's check the, I'll get that ring around it. Now for this, we don't actually want our user to be able to resize it out of our form, so we can just put the resizing. So we can set resizing. We can first of all select text area, so set resizing to only be vertically possible. So that should take care of that. Okay, so now let's check our link. So when we click on home, we go back to the home, to the top. About us takes us to the about us section, services, then contact us. Now the last but not the least section of this page is our footer. So now let's start off with, okay, before we move on to that, we also need to ensure the font is responsive, and for that our form row, now we can actually leave it like this, but the input just feels a bit small, so let's just make the form row to be a block level element at a particular threshold. Now for this, I think a threshold of about somewhere around here should be ideal. So let's just go for 560, even one. So after this width of 50%, let's do at media max width 560 pixels, then select our contact form. This, we want this to be 100 pixels, and this should now be a block level element, and that should be that for our form. Now the footer aspect, we come out of the main tag and create the footer. Now as always, we add the container class, then the first. So for this we have 4 sections. The first is the contact info, the contact info section, and the second is our quick links, then the next is our services, then socials. let's also add something that we didn't have before. So just copy. So let's change this to 2024. And now let's get styling. Let's add some inline style here, margin bottom 20 pixels, and this can just have a styling of text line center. So let's close this. Let's see the footer we have. Okay, let's also add some margin at the bottom for this also. This could be 10 pixels. Okay, so now let's get to styling this. First of all, we select our footer. So it should be footer. So now select the footer tag, give the background color of secondary color, and a padding of 20 pixels. Then footer dot container, display flex, and we want our flex to actually wrap. So then padding 40 pixels top, bottom, 10 pixels left, right. And let's see the result now. Okay, now since this is background color, we want our copyright text to be white, and since this is getting a bit long, let's just add a class name of copyright, and we can just transfer all this into that class name. So down here, footer dot copyright, we have all this, so color of white, and text align center, margin bottom 20 pixels. Let's view that result, and so that should be ideal. Now let's start styling. Let's first of all add the content of sections. For the contact info, we want to first of all have a h2 tag here saying contact us, then a paragraph with class of info with some short text, and a paragraph with contact links, and this will be 2. So now first of all we have our icon, then our anchor tag. Now an anchor tag with telephone does something different. So when you click on this, it links to the user's calling, where the user can actually call that number you've put in. So for this we'll use telephone, then add just a random number, then you can now add the actual text the user sees a bit more formatted. So the number I put in here, you don't add any spacing, but for the actual text the user sees, you can do whatever you want there. Then the next contact link will be for email, so change this phone to envelope, and this href will now become mail to. So now just like telephone, mail to will open the user's mailing app for them to be able to send whatever email to the email you've set here. So let's see the results. So that's the first section done. Let's move over to the next section, which is our quick links. So just like before, you add a h2 with text that says quick links, then a UL here, another list with some items here. So we'll have all this, then one more contact us, and before the anchor tags I want to have some angles. So FA angle right. Then the third section would be services, and another unordered list. So we can just copy this and remove one and just make all this. So now be service items, service item 1, service item 2, and service item 3. So now I can link this all up. So about us, services, and then contact us. And then the last part of the footer will be our socials. So same h2 socials, then socials lists. So for this we'll just have links with social media icons. Then we also want this to open in on that page. If we add our social link to it, then a class name of social. So for the first one, I'll add the brand logo for Facebook. So this is the icon code. Then you can just copy this 3 more times and add popular social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, then we have X, Twitter, and WhatsApp. And let's see the results. So now the content for our footer is all done. Now it's time to get to styling. So now we've styled our container. Now let's style the divs. So footer.container. So select the next, whatever the child elements are. Select that and give it a width of, since now we have 4 elements, the width will be 25 pixels. So just 4 divided by 100. Then give them all padding, top and bottom 0, left and right 18 pixels. Then we use the flex property to make it that the element should not grow or shrink, and the flex basis, which is the last parameter, should now be auto. So which means that whatever width we've set should be what the width of that element should take up in the flex box. So now that's it for that. Let's start styling our text. So the first thing is to style all h2 elements and our contact info paragraph dot contact info p, and just give it a color of white. Now let's actually style contact info here, which is this. So we select this, and this time we just want to style the info itself, which is the first paragraph, and that will now be font size 13 pixels, font weight 500, and margin bottom of 20 pixels. Let's view the results. Now it's looking a lot more like it. And now we need to style our contact links. So just select our contact links, and we want them to be a flex box to align the text and the icon, then item center, gap 10 pixels, margin bottom 10 pixels, color white. Then we now want to style our icon itself, so select this and reduce the font size to 14 pixels. So this can work both ways for the icon and anchor tag. Now to style your anchor tag individually, give it a color of white, for transition of 0.5 seconds. And now we also want to have a hover class, so when our user hovers over this, we want to change the color to text hover and do something a bit different. So this text stretches out a bit. Set the letter spacing to 0.8 pixels. So now let's see the results. And now when we hover over this, our text spreads out and color changes. So we're done with the first section. Now to move over to the unordered lists. So now we select all unordered lists in our footer and give them a list style of none and a margin top of 15 pixels to separate it from the H2 elements. So now we style our list items, giving it a display of flex, align items, center, margin bottom 10 pixels and a gap of 6 pixels. And we style the anchor tags and the list items together. So now give them a color of white, then font size of 14 pixels and transition of 0.5 seconds. And same thing we did here, we do it here. So can actually just get rid of this and apply the same styling to these two elements. So we'll refresh. This should be it. And okay, we didn't add the hover pseudo class. So now that should work. Now when we hover, our text increases and changes color. So now the last part of this will be our social links, all this. So let's add that. Now the last thing we have to do is to select our socials list. So what we just do is footer dot socials list. We make this a flex box. Align items center them vertically, then a gap of 10 pixels between each item and a margin top of 10 pixels. So now let's see this result. So now the items have been centered vertically and our items now have gaps of 10 pixels. So now let's style the social items itself. So go back to your CSS and we select the social item. So socials list dot social, which is the class name we give to the items right here. So now once again we make this a flex box so we can center the icon. So then align the item center vertically, then justified content center, which is horizontally. Then we give the color, which is the item, a color of white. Then we want the icon to have a font size of 17 pixels. Then a border radius of 50% to achieve that effect we have in this footer right here. So to achieve this effect, so we use a border radius of 50%. So now the next thing we need to do is to add the actual border. So we add a border of 1 pixel solid white. Then we give this social icon a mean width of 30 pixels. So we don't want the items to go below this width. Then a mean height of 30 pixels, or better yet, we can add a width, just a width of 30 pixels, height of 30 pixels, and then we use the flex property, give it a grow and shrink of 0. Then the flex basis should be auto to make this width, to make the item always retain this width. Then add a transition property of 0.5 seconds. So let's see our results. So at this point you should have that social list effect. So there we have it. The next thing I want to do is to add the hover effect. So all you just need to do is copy this and add the pseudo class of hover. Then we want to change the color to text color hover, text hover color, and same for the border color, text hover color. So our result should be this. So now we've achieved a result close to what we have here. So let's see. So this has so the size of this icon div is actually a bit bigger. So let's increase this from 30 to 35. So our icons and the border have a bit of space between them. So let's see. Okay, so this is perfect. Now next thing to do is to make sure that this is also responsive. So we inspect and we need to make this footer responsive, so each column will have to shrink. So currently we have our columns they look okay at 1022. So let's see, let's keep reducing and see where we should add our breakpoints. So somewhere at 768. So at 768, let's change some things. So the first thing we can do is to remove our padding, so this has more space to work with. So let's see that. So let's just go up here where we start our container and add that media max width. of 768 pixels. We want our footer to have a padding of 0, and let's see that result. Okay, so and also at this point we can change it from the 4-column flexbox to 2 columns. So we just need this, and at this point you can also remove the padding completely, and we change this to 50%, so each column takes up 50%. And since we added the flex wrap here, the other items will go under the rest. So let's see that, and that's it. Next thing to do is let's add a margin bottom. Okay, and we shouldn't actually remove the padding here, so we can still have some space between these two. So let's just change that. You go back to your code editor, and here you change it to margin bottom of 20 pixels. So let's see that result. Okay, so we have this, looks okay. Let's also reduce it and see at smaller sizes. So now at smaller sizes we should make it a 1-column flex box. So at a size like 500 pixels, let's change that a bit also. So from what we've learned, all we just need to do is we add the breakpoint of 500 pixels, and we just need to change this to 100%. And since it no longer shares space with any other element, then any other column can change the padding to completely 0. So let's see the results. And now that looks, let's reduce it. Yeah, so now this looks okay. We are done with the footer. Now let's see what's going on at the bottom here. Our footer, the copyright area, let's add we can add a line that goes between this. So let's see that. So now above this div, or just above the copyright here, using the styling that we have down here, we can add border top 1 pixel solid, and let's see whether we have a color here we can use. So we can use the color of, let's say, text hover. See how that looks. So this looks a bit okay. Let's add the margin top between this, then margin top, let's just change this. So margin 20 pixels top and bottom, left and right 0, and here where we added margin bottom, let's see. So on the container class, let's remove this margin bottom of 20 pixels and see the results. Okay, so the margin top isn't working since this border is on the element. So for that we can change that to padding. So padding top of 20 pixels. Okay, so this looks a bit better, and let's get the sizing of the top and bottom to be somewhat aligned, so we can increase this to 30 or 35. So currently at this point this looks a bit better, and let's see it at a smaller width. So our footer looks a bit better. Let's see why it's not taking up the full width, the full height. So our footer, then our copyright text, our HTML takes up the full height and not body. And so from what I'm seeing, it's probably the margin we added. So let's get rid of this margin and refresh this. So now that problem is gone, so we can change that margin to padding. So we can just remove this padding top of 35 pixels and now put 35 pixels top and bottom, then left and right 0. So now this looks perfect. Let's see it in desktop view. So now this looks okay. We can also change the padding that we have at the footer so it doesn't interfere with the copyright text. So footer, put padding 20 pixels, then 0, 20 pixels, 20 pixels, then 0. So our top has 20 pixels, left and right has 20 pixels, then bottom has 0. So let's see the results, and this looks okay. So now we are completely done with this web page. I hope you've learned a lot and how you can use the CSS skills to build real world websites. So this is something basic and you can do a lot more, but for any website you need to build, these are the basic things you need to know, especially how to use the flexbox in CSS. That's a very important thing, and how to make your CSS code responsive. So there are a lot of things you can do with CSS even without using JavaScript. A big example is this effect. So I hope you've learned a lot. This is the end of the CSS course, and if you want to learn more you can go over to W3 Schools and check out their CSS course. There's a lot there that you can learn. So now the next thing we'll be moving over to is JavaScript, which we get to play around with manipulating elements on your HTML page, and I hope you enjoy it, and bye for now.